I always knew my sister would try to ruin my wedding. I just didn't think she'd do it in front of God and everyone. My name is Emma Collins. I met the love of my life in a small Italian restaurant tucked between a bookstore and a florist in downtown Boston. James was carrying 3 plates of pasta when we first locked eyes. At least, that's the version of the story everyone believed. Rachel especially. He's a waiter? She'd said when I brought him home for the first time. Not asked. Said. Like the word itself tasted bitter. Emma, you went to Yale. You could have married a senator. Or a surgeon. Not someone refilling water glasses. That was Rachel. Life, to her, was a resume, a price tag, a ranking system. She married a hedge fund manager at 23 and treated it like a trophy she carried everywhere. Meanwhile, I apparently committed a social crime by falling in love with a man who wore an apron. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that James wasn't just learning how to serve pasta. He was learning how to run an empire. As the only grandson of the legendary Romano restaurant dynasty, he insisted on starting from the bottom, washing dishes, waiting tables, managing closing shifts. If I can't respect every job, he told me once, eyes gleaming with quiet confidence, I don't deserve to lead the people who do them. We agreed to keep his identity private until after the wedding. No announcements, no headlines, just us. Let them underestimate, he'd whispered one night. It makes the reveal more fun. The morning of our wedding was clear and bright, the kind of perfect spring day that feels orchestrated. The church was small, elegant, filled with white lilies and soft candlelight, intimate, not like Rachel's cathedral-scale spectacle 3 years earlier, complete with ice sculptures and a live orchestra. I was in the bridal suite when the door slammed open. Rachel stood there in couture, perfectly styled, eyes blazing. You cannot do this, she announced, like she was calling off a hostile takeover. Do you know what people are saying? The only person talking, Rachel, my mother sighed, adjusting my veil, is you. She's throwing her life away, Rachel pressed. He probably wants her money. That almost made me laugh out loud. My modest teacher's salary compared to James's quiet fortune? If irony had a soundtrack, it would have played then. Go ahead, Rachel snapped when I didn't respond. Marry your waiter. Just don't call me when you're living above a kitchen that smells like garlic. If she only knew about the penthouse overlooking the harbor, the vineyard in Napa, the private island already booked for our honeymoon. But I stayed silent. The best truths don't need defending, they need timing. The ceremony began beautifully. James stood at the altar, impossibly handsome in a tailored suit Rachel likely assumed was rented. His expression when he saw me, pure, unguarded love, washed away everything else. Until the minister reached the line. If anyone knows any reason these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. And Rachel stood. I object. Gasps rippled through the church. This is insane, she shouted, turning to the guests like she was hosting a press conference. Emma, you're humiliating yourself. You're marrying a waiter. A waiter. You're supposed to be the smart one. The word echoed against stained glass. James squeezed my hand. His thumb brushed gently against my palm. Now, he murmured. Not yet, I whispered. Rachel wasn't done. She marched up the aisle, heels striking the stone like punctuation. When this collapses, and it will, don't expect sympathy. You chose this. You chose this. She gestured toward James like he was an unfortunate accessory. My father stood halfway, mortified. Rachel, enough. But she was already storming out, doors slamming behind her. Silence. The minister cleared his throat. Shall we continue? I looked at James. He looked amused, steady, certain. Yes, I said, let's continue. And we did. The rest of the ceremony felt lighter without her shadow in the room. We exchanged vows, rings, promises. When he kissed me, it felt like the beginning of something powerful, not just love, but a shift. Because Act 2 was coming. The reception was held at the Romano. Not a banquet hall, not a rented ballroom. The Romano. The crown jewel of the Romano Empire, closed to the public that day for a private family event. Rachel didn't know that. James helped me into the vintage Rolls-Royce from his personal collection, though officially it was borrowed. Rice showered us as we drove away. Think she'll come? I asked. She won't be able to resist, he replied smoothly. Superiority has a gravitational pull. He was right. When we arrived, the grand doors opened to crystal chandeliers, marble floors, hand-painted ceilings. White glove servers floated through the room with champagne bottles worth more than most monthly salaries. Guests whispered. How did they afford this? Rachel arrived 20 minutes late. She stepped inside, ready to sneer. And froze. There's been a mistake, she said sharply. This is the Romano. They don't host weddings. They do, James replied calmly, appearing beside me. For family. Before she could process that, the room shifted. An elderly man in an immaculate suit approached us. Silver hair, commanding presence. Every restaurateur in the country knew his name. Antonio Romano. He embraced James warmly. My grandson, he said proudly. You've chosen well, my boy. Welcome to the family, Emma. The heir left the room. Rachel's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering against marble. Grandson? She whispered. What do you mean, grandson? Antonio turned slowly toward her. His expression wasn't angry. It was assessing. And you, he said coolly, must be the sister who caused such a scene at the church. Who caused such a scene at the church? Tell me, Antonio said calmly, his voice carrying effortlessly across the marble floor. What was it you called my grandson? Ah yes, some server. The words landed like a gavel strike. The color drained from Rachel's face so quickly it was almost visible. Around us, whispers began to swell as guests connected the dots. James wasn't just a waiter. He was the heir to the Romano Group, a dynasty of Michelin-starred restaurants, luxury hotels, vineyards stretching across Napa and Tuscany, and real estate holdings most people only read about in financial magazines. I didn't know, Rachel breathed. Clearly, Antonio replied dryly. Though ignorance rarely excuses cruelty, true class, my dear, is revealed in how we treat those we believe beneath us. James' hand tightened gently around mine. Steady, warm, certain. Rachel looked like she might shatter. Guests who had witnessed her outburst at the church were now watching the consequences unfold in high definition. The simple ceremony, the lavish reception, the waiter who turned out to be restaurant royalty. Why didn't you tell me? Rachel suddenly snapped, desperation replacing shock. You let me humiliate myself. I held her gaze. Would it have changed anything? If you'd known who he was, would you have treated him differently? She didn't answer. That, I said quietly, is exactly why we stayed silent. But I'm your sister. Yes, I replied, which makes what you did worse, not better. Antonio adjusted his cufflinks. If you prefer to leave, no one would fault you. You've already given the room its drama for the evening. Rachel's face burned crimson. She looked around, at the chandeliers, the polished marble, the servers who now knew exactly what she'd said about their work. Judgment hung in the air like perfume. I should go, she murmured. Stay. The word came from James. Everyone turned. Stay, he repeated gently. Eat, celebrate. Consider this a chance to see people as they are, not as titles or paychecks. In that moment, my husband showed more grace than Rachel had in years. She swallowed. Pride and humiliation battled across her face. I owe you both an apology. Yes, Antonio said evenly. But first, I believe the bride and groom deserve their dance. The music began. Under crystal chandeliers, James pulled me into his arms. As we moved across the floor, I caught glimpses of Rachel standing alone near the edge of the room, watching, processing, recalculating. She'll never completely stop caring about status, James murmured against my temple. No, I agreed softly, but maybe she'll think twice before judging someone for earning an honest living. Dinner unfolded like theater, course after exquisite course, wine from the family's private reserve, guests hanging on to Antonio's stories. He insisted on starting at the bottom. Antonio told them proudly. Washing dishes, serving tables, managing inventory. Most heirs want corner offices. My grandson wanted calluses. I saw Rachel absorb that. Work ethic. Humility. Leadership earned, not inherited. Her husband Michael had never worked a day outside climate-controlled offices. And now, in comparison, the difference was glaring. She tried to approach us several times that night. Each time, someone else intercepted us with congratulations. For once, she wasn't the center of the room. And perhaps that was necessary. A year passed. James stepped further into leadership at the Romano Group. I continued teaching. We lived quietly in our Harborview penthouse, resisting every temptation to turn our lives into spectacle. Rachel, however, struggled. She began attaching herself to the Romano name. Social media posts, carefully staged dinners, family night at the Romano, subtle bragging disguised as bonding. James only laughed. Free marketing. Then the scandal hit. Michael's hedge fund collapsed under federal investigation, insider trading, fraudulent reports, frozen assets. The headlines were merciless. And one rainy night, Rachel stood outside our door, mascara streaked, designer coat clutched tight like armor that no longer worked. "They're taking everything," she whispered. "The house, the cars. Michael might go to prison. I don't even know how to start over." For the first time in her life, she looked small. James closed his laptop slowly. "There's an apartment," he said carefully, "above one of our smaller restaurants in Cambridge. It's modest, but it's available." Her head snapped up. "You'd let me stay there?" "On one condition," I said. She already knew. "I work there." "Yes. You mean, wait tables? And wash dishes, and prep vegetables, and clean bathrooms," James added gently. "The full experience." Silence stretched. This was the moment pride either hardened or broke. "Okay," she whispered, "I'll do it." The first month was brutal. She cried after rude customers, burned her hands, dropped plates, her feet blistered. The uniform felt like punishment. But she showed up the next day. And the next. And the next. Something began to change. She stopped complaining about tips and started fighting for fair ones. She defended line cooks. She began staying late to help close. The staff, once wary, slowly accepted her. 6 months later, I visited unannounced. Rachel stood at the pass, calling orders with calm authority, hair tied back, no designer labels, just competence. "She's earned their respect," James said quietly beside me. "That's not easy." When her shift ended, she slid into the booth across from us, exhausted but glowing in a way I'd never seen before. "How would you feel," James asked casually, "about managing this location?" She blinked. "Managing? You've learned every position. You understand the staff. The current manager is transferring to Chicago. The job is yours, if you want it." Tears welled in her eyes instantly. "After everything I did?" "You proved something," I said softly, "that you're capable of growth." She shook her head. "I used to think money was power. Now I know respect is." "And how do you earn respect?" James asked. "By showing up. By working. By treating people like they matter." Exactly. A month later, she stood at a family reunion wearing a tailored but simple manager's blazer embroidered with the Romano insignia. No bragging. No posturing. Just quiet pride. Later that night, as James and I walked home, he squeezed my hand. "Your sister found her way." "Our way," I corrected, "the hard way." The wedding reveal had been dramatic. Her humiliation had been loud. But her transformation, that was the real victory. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't exposure. It's evolution. And watching Rachel become someone who respected servers instead of sneering at them was worth more than all the Romano billions combined.